several sort of sources, and there we already talked about basically the Brahminical sources, right? So first we started with the Brahminical sources, and in fact within the Brahminical sources we have covered various kind of sources. So more or less we talked about all sort of sources, but then we focus on only few the topics from where we can really expect the question. And while doing so, I have emphasized on what, first of all I talked about the Vedas, in part of Shruti literature, and I told you that what is the significance of Veda as a source of history. And the way I did tell you that Vedas are somehow helping you to understand the transition specifically from the early Vedic period to the later Vedic period. So in order to understand this transition, the Vedas are very important, right? Okay, the second thing that what we started discussing is basically about the epics. Got it? So while having the discussion over the Shruti literature, we did we did have a discussion basically where we are talking about basically, I mean to say, the other literatures such as Aranyakas are there, Upanishads are there, Brahmins are there, right? This is what we have discussed, and then we move to the Smriti literature, and in the Smriti literature we basically discuss about we discuss separately about epics first, Itihasa and Purana, and there again we just tried to have the discussion over this fact that how come the Vedas, sorry, the epics, Itihasa and Purana are important for history writing. Then we move to Puranas, the same concept we have discussed for the Puranas also. Then we discuss about the Dharma Shastras also. Even the Dharma Shastras, specifically for the post-Vedic period, it is very important to understand or extract the historical information. And we have talked about that how come the Dharma Shastras are helping us to write the history. Now when it comes to the flaws of the Brahminical literature, that also we have discussed, and when it comes to the flaws of the Brahminical literature, so we have discussed about basically various things that we talked about, what are the problems with the Brahminical sources, either with respect to time or authorship or extrapolation, discussing more about general rather than specific, right? The the approach towards the life, less discussion about materialism and so on, right? So we have talked about the weaknesses as well. Then we move to the Buddhist literature, that is another important form of religious literature, and there we have just focused that how come the Buddhist literature are proved to be the better sources than the Brahminical sources. So I told you that some of the flaws which are there with the Brahminical sources, fortunately these flaws are not there with the Buddhist sources, and that's how in many regards Buddhist sources can be considered as a better source. And in fact you should always keep in mind that undoubtedly the Buddhist sources are very helpful to us whenever it comes to the history writing. But then yes, what would be the conclusion if you have been really making a comparison between the two? In that case, you should always write. In fact, whenever you have been making any comparison, you should always write that one sort of source would not be sufficient ever to write the history. So as many as sources are available to us, it is always good for us to write the history on the basis of that. So hardly matters that which one is better. Of course the Buddhist sources are better, and in fact all those flaws are not there with the Buddhist sources, but yet we cannot disregard, we cannot we cannot discard the importance of Brahminical sources as a source of history. Then it came to Jaina literature, and I did tell you that unfortunately the Jain literature are not very helpful in history writing, and we did discuss that what are the reasons because of what we cannot discuss or we cannot take much help from the Jain literature in order to write the history. So these are certain discussions we already had, and now it comes to moving into another important source of Indian history, that is about the foreign accounts, right? So today we are going to do this foreign accounts. So let's first of all understand what is this? Foreign accounts, right? You must have heard a lot about these foreign accounts, and in fact since beginning you must be listening about so many different kind of sources which are falling in the category of foreign accounts. But let me tell you, mostly whatever the information that you people have been reading, these are partial information. You have you have never read the complete information about the foreign accounts. Now, from the name itself, it is very clear that what sort of sources could be kept in the category of foreign accounts. So, of course, the literature which is not an Indian literature, but since they are giving certain information on India, and that's why they should be considered as part of Indian literature. Sorry, they should be considered as part of the sources of Indian history, and that's how we have to talk about these sources. Now, when it comes to the foreign literature, mostly you know about the Greek literature, then Chinese literature, and then max to max the Arab literature. These are the three forms of literature that you do know. But then I must tell you that the moment it comes to the foreign accounts, the domain of the foreign accounts are much more wider than your basic perception, right? So, if we'll try to classify them into certain categories, in that case, what are the what are the categories that could be made out of it? So, first of all, I'll say in this particular category, there is one important source which is there, that's called as Greco-Roman. There is one important category, that could be noticed is the Greco-Roman. Sorry? Greco, no, it's same. It's being written in this manner only. So, it's Greco-Roman literature, which is undoubtedly working as a source of history, right? After Greco-Roman literature, what next? Which one is the popular one? Then you talk about Chinese literature. Can you tell me about the other important sources foreign accounts which are quite helpful? Arab, right, okay. But then Arab literature is quite helpful for history writing only during the early medieval and onwards, right? Now, before that you do not find the Arab accounts, because the Arab travelers started coming to India only once the Islam has emerged, and then the Islamic empires got formed, and then they had started sending some of the people to India. Yes, then only we do. Sorry? No, Mesopotamian literature is not very helpful. Only while writing the history of Indus Valley civilization, we do get some references from it.
There is only one reference of trade between.
Exactly. There are some more literature, more references, but then it is never considered to be a very important source, right? Okay. Apart from that, you guys are missing something which is very important. That is Sri Lankan literature. Okay. That's also one form of literature. After the Sri Lankan literature, we can even talk about another very important literature from the Nepal, right? So, some folklores of Nepal, right? Some folklores of Nepal, these are also quite helpful. Then it comes to another category, and that could be called as Tibetan. होता क्या है यूजुअली जब भी हम फॉरेन अकाउंट्स की बात करते हैं, we mainly focus on Greco-Roman and Chinese. We never talk more about these sources, but let me tell you that these are also quite important for us. And in today's class, we are going to discuss about the significance of these kind of important sources also, right? So what we are going to do, we are just going to start the discussion from Greco-Roman, and then we'll go to Chinese, then we'll go to Sri Lankan, and that's how we are just going to cover all this. Of course, towards the end, the Arab literature is also coming, but normally when I cover the syllabus, I keep it aside. The reason being that when it comes to Arab literature, as I have already told you, that it is helping us to construct the history of early medieval, right? Now, when it comes to early medieval, that's a bit dicey that whether we should study it as part of ancient or as part of medieval. So, we'll keep it we'll study it separately, and there we'll talk about the Arab literature, specifically about that particular person that's called as Al-Biruni, right? So, let's start the discussion with the Greco-Roman. Greco-Roman literature. Now, this is something that you all have studied history, I guess, that's why you must be aware of that what is this Greco-Roman literature. But I would like to discuss it with respect to some other aspects basically. When it comes to the Greco-Roman, the Greco-Roman writing, there are so many writings, and in fact you must have heard of those writings. But before I come to those writings, there are few things that you should keep in mind, that as far as the modern scholars are concerned, so who are those scholars, those who have studied about all these let's say all these Greco-Roman sources, and they have literally written about that the information we have been getting from it, right? So if I'll talk about the important authors, those who have been writing about it, so among the earliest scholar I can talk about one person, that's called as A.L. Basam. ठीक है?
He was a historian or a writer,
Author. A.L. Basam was the author who has written the cultural history of India. ठीक है? India, that is a wonder. That period, right? Not that period, right? He's a modern writer. He's a modern writer, and in 20th century his book has been published, but this is again considered as one of the most important books in order to understand the cultural history of India. So he has talked about all these foreign accounts as important source. Apart from this, there was another scholar that you all must have heard again, that is R.C. Majumdar. R.C. Majumdar ने भी बहुत critical analysis किया है कि how come these sources are helpful to us, ठीक है? And in fact he talks about the utility and the way we can literally use them for history writing. So that's how R.C. Majumdar could be also kept in the list, because he is undoubtedly very helpful, right? Apart from that, there was another scholar called as Jonah Lendering, ठीक है? Jonah Lendering is Jonah A. Jonah Lendering जो है उन्होंने खासकर, I don't know whether you have heard this Greek author or not, called as Tasius. I think you must have heard Tasius. नहीं सुना कभी, के से शुरू होता है टेसियस है. सो कई लोग कैटेसियस भी पढ़ते हैं, ठीक है, पर टेसियस है. टेसियस के बारे में लिखा है, और अभी हम बात करेंगे जो है क्या इम्पोर्टेंस है उसकी, ठीक है. तो दिस इज अनदर इम्पोर्टेंट स्कॉलर. देन वी कैन टॉक अबाउट जे मैक्रिंडल, राइट? J. Macrindle, another very important scholar, and the last one, Grant Peter. Grant Peter, ठीक है? आप बाकी नाम ना भी याद रखें चलेगा, लेकिन कम से कम ये कुछ नाम मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, ये नाम आपके लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. Of course, while writing any answer, you need to refer A.L. Basam. R.C. Majumdar is very important, ठीक है? मैक्रेंडल इज इंपॉर्टेंट एंड पीटर ग्रांट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ये चार नाम तो इंपॉर्टेंट है, और ठीक है आप चार में मैक्रेंडल को भूल भी जाए तो पीटर ग्रांट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. फर्स्ट, सेकंड एंड थर्ड, दीज थ्री नेम्स यू हैव टू रिमेंबर, एंड इन फैक्ट व्हेनेवर यू हैव बीन राइटिंग एनी आंसर यू नीड टू refer them, because without referring them unfortunately you won't be able to complete that answer, which is going to get you good marks. First of all, now this is one thing that you have to keep in mind. Now coming to this part, when it comes to the Greco-Roman sources, how it has been realized, ठीक है, how it has been realized that the Greco-Roman sources can be quite helpful for Indian history writing. How this idea is coming, that's a very important question, and please listen it very carefully. आपको क्या लगता है कि कैसे ये ये इंसाइट आई होगी कि ग्रीको रोमन सोर्सेज भी इंडियन हिस्ट्री को हेल्प स्टडी करने में हेल्प कर सकती है? एनी आइडिया अबाउट दिस? सॉरी, before 1784, right? Before, now I think you can understand something. Before 1784, there was no use of any Greek or Greco-Roman writing for history writing of India. Now this is a subjective question itself, whether history of India was present or not. Of course, as per the modern understanding of history, we do believe the history of India itself was not present. Let's leave that question, but yes, this is pretty sure that before 1784, even this trend was not there, that some Greco-Roman accounts could have also helped in history writing of India. and that's why there was no use of any Greco-Roman writing before that. What happens after 1784? You know about a very important development in terms of Asiatic society, right? And when this Asiatic society was being written down, Asiatic society was established by Warren Hastings, right? And Asiatic society, there are two fellows who had majorly contributed here. One is Warren Hastings and the second is William Jones, right? So William Jones और Hastings, हम William Jones के बारे में ज़्यादा बात करेंगे, ठीक है? क्योंकि Hastings हमारे लिए इतना important नहीं है. William Jones, who is considered to be the founder of Asiatic society with the help of Warren Hastings. Now, this person was the first person who identified the significance of the Greco-Roman sources. Why? Because do you know one thing? Earlier there was no Indian source which was ever talking about Chandragupta Maurya. There was no Indian text which has categorically talked about the Chandragupta Maurya. And in fact, we had very lesser reference of Chandragupta Maurya. If you do not know, for your information, I can tell you that there is one text which got written down somewhere in 6th century, that's called as Mudra Rakshas by Visakadatta. This is one of the only text, not one of the it is one of the earliest texts, not only text, which is dealing with the story of Chandragupta Maurya. But then you can see the difference of time. There is a difference of 900 years, and that's why what must be the authenticity of that book, that you all can understand that this is very less authentic, and that's how this was not considered to be a very authentic source of on Chandragupta Maurya. But then this person, William Jones, has proved that in the Greek sources there is a name that has been very frequently used. That's called as Sendrokotas. I think you must have heard of this name. Have you heard this name before? It's called as Sendrokotas, or else Androkotas. So in the Greek writings, there was these two names have been referred very frequently, and it is William Jones who has been proving that this person is no one but Chandragupta Maurya. And I hope you can understand how helpful this must be, right, while writing the history of India, specifically the foundation of Mauryan Empire, where this is one text which is giving us information. नाम से और थोड़े इंसिडेंट से कोइंसाइड करके उन्होंने ये कंक्लूजन दिया कि ये कोई और नहीं, विलियम जोन्स ने. तो चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य और मौर्यन एम्पायर की जो हिस्ट्री है ये बहुत इट्स ओइंग सो मच फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर ये डिस्कवरी, एंड दैट्स हाउ द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ द ग्रीको रोमन राइटिंग had been realized in Indian context, and here onwards you can find that there was very frequent use of these writings in order to write the history of India. Okay, right. So fine. Next, another important thing that you have to understand from the for the Greco-Roman writing, that whenever it comes to Greco-Roman writing, we always treat them as a single category, right? That won't be fair if you have been really treating them as a single category. Rather, you should treat them you should classify them in multiple categories, and that's why you should use the Greco-Roman account as a source of history, right? So when it comes to the Greco-Roman accounts, that could be divided into three categories. There might be three categories in which we can study it. What are these categories? First, we can keep pre-Mauryan, right? The second is the Mauryan, and third is post-Mauryan. Very nice. और ऐसा मैं क्यों कह रहा हूँ अभी थोड़ी देर के बाद समझ में आएगा, और ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग जो है आपको क्वेश्चन लिखने में भी हेल्प करेगी, तो आपको तीन कैटेगरी में रख के स्टडी करेंगे. ओके फाइन. सो व्हेन इट कम्स टू द प्री मौर्यन पीरियड, राइट, सो व्हेन इट कम्स टू द प्री मौर्यन पीरियड, इन दैट केस कम्स टू प्री मौर्यन, ओके, या दूसरे पेज पे चलते हैं. लेट्स गो टू द अनदर पेज. सो व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट द pre-Mauryan, I think you can tell me about the name of few of the important scholars or important writers in the pre-Mauryan period? Do you remember? ऐसा तो नहीं होना चाहिए. Pre-Mauryan Greek authors के बारे में बता दीजिए. You just tell me. Of course not Indian, Greco-Roman. I am talking about Greco-Roman. जब मैं कहूँगा आपसे तब आप कहेंगे हाँ ये तो पता था, बट मैं तब आपको ये एक्सेप्ट करना पड़ेगा कि आपको नहीं पता था ये. हाँ, have you heard the name of one person that's called as? अभी आप कहेंगे कि आपको तो पता था हेरोडोटस के बारे में. मुझे पता है आपको पता था, लेकिन नाउ यू हैव टू एक्सेप्ट दैट यू डिडंट नो अबाउट हेरोडोटस. एम आई करेक्ट? आप लोगों को नहीं पता था हेरोडोटस के बारे में, मैंने बताया आपको. ठीक है, ओके फाइन. लेट्स मूव टू नेक्स्ट वन. हाँ, इसका मुझे नहीं पता कि आपको ये पता है या नहीं. ठीक है, देयर इज एन अनदर ग्रेट स्कॉलर कॉल्ड एज थेसियस. ठीक है, he was not writing about India. Like, you know, we are here counting, or we are like, you know, taking the name of only those scholars, those who have written something about India. Okay? Now let's check whether this. Have you heard the name of this person? अब मैं अभी फिर से कहानी सुनाऊंगा तो आपको बताएंगे कि हाँ पता था इसका. Have you heard of this person ever before Nearchus? Nearchus? नहीं, नो आइडिया. अच्छा, मैं बता रहा हूँ. When Alexander returned from India, Alexander was very important to find even the sea route to India, and that's why he had a friend with him called as Nearchus. He was sent by Alexander to find the sea route to India, and Nearchus was the first person who was discovering the sea route to India. He was Nearchus. Got it? ठीक है. Well, apart from this, like, you know, there was another person called as Enniceratus. ठीक है. There was another, not like, you know, Socrates. It's Enniceratus, right? Just a second. Enniceratus. ठीक है, this was another important person. Enniceratus, right? Enniceratus, Enniceratus, right? This was another person. ठीक है, and okay, there was one more name that we can write is Aristobulus. ठीक है, this is Aristobulus. 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 Sorry? नहीं यार, इसमें से कुछ नाम भी आपको याद रहेगा, आपका काम चल जाएगा. नहीं, एक ही कैसे रहेगा? ऑफ कोर्स हेरोडोटस आप याद रख सकते हैं. टेसियस इज अ वेरी फेमस पर्सन, राइट? द वेरी फेमस पर्सन टेसियस. ठीक है, नियार्कस इज ऑल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. लास्ट दो नहीं भी याद रहे चलेगा. ठीक है, मैं आपको सिर्फ नाम बता रहा हूँ कि देयर आर सो मेनी स्कॉलर्स. ठीक है, एंड इन फैक्ट दे हैव रिटन अ लॉट अबाउट इंडिया एंड दे आर इंपॉर्टेंट टू अस, राइट? आई विल बी जस्ट डिस्कसिंग अबाउट देयर सिग्निफिकेंस एंड in fact you'll be noting down couple of points also for them, like, you know, which is important. Okay, fine. So now when it comes to Herodotus, can somebody tell me the name of the book that was written by Herodotus? Anybody? That is called as Historica. ठीक है, आप हिस्ट्री बोल लीजिए, कोई बात नहीं. So the name of the book which was written by Herodotus is Historica. Herodotus is the same person who is known as the father of history, right? Acha, what information he is providing in this particular book? Again, I hope you must be having some idea, but let's assume that you are not having any idea, and that's how let me discuss. So Herodotus is considered as the father of, like, you know, history, and it is believed that the first person, in fact this particular fellow was discussed by me when I was having the discussion over historiography and history writing. And I did tell you that he believed that we should actually collect the things or the events which are happening around us in order to convey it to our future generation, and that's how the concept of history appeared as a formal discipline, right? Herodotus is writing about the invasion of Darius first to India, right? And then he is talking about Darius first in India, जो हम कभी बात करेंगे भी, ठीक है, we'll study about this during the Mauryan period, pre-Mauryan period, in fact we'll talk about it. So he talks about the invasion of Darius first, and then he also writes that how come the northwestern part of India was included in the Greco-Roman Empire, and in fact he also writes that this particular place was giving the maximum revenue as compared to the Greco territories, and that's how this image was built for India, that India, what kind of country India is. India is a very rich and prosperous country, right? So he is giving that annual rent or the tax, not rent, annual tax which was going from this particular part was 320 talents of gold. That used to be a huge sum of money, and that's how it remains a sort of very valuable source, right? But then there is a very important question: did Herodotus ever come to India? Is he coming to India? No, he never came to India, right? And he had been writing everything on basis of what? That is the question. He is never coming to India. So if he does not come to India, how come he was capable of writing about India? So he was capable of writing about India on the basis of something that is called as hearsay. What is hearsay? सुन के लिखना, कहीं से उन्होंने सुना और सुनने के बाद उन्होंने लिख दिया, ठीक है. So actually this is not considered to be very valuable thing, right? Whenever something has been written on the basis of some sort of hearsay. Now it comes to another important source, that is Tacitus. Now when it comes to Tacitus, now this person is again first of all let me tell you, his book is not present to us, okay? It is not present in the independent form. So since the book is not present in independent, so how come we have been discussing about him as an author? Because the references had been taken from his book, and since it does not present in an independent manner, and that's how references had been taken from this book, and that's how we do find the references of India from the book of Tacitus, which is not independently available, rather its references could be found in the other sources. Now the question again comes the same, right? Whether Tacitus ever came to India? No, he also did not come to India, and that's how we have been rejecting his idea, rejecting his authenticity also. Then it is coming to Nearchus. I have already told you the significance of Nearchus, that Nearchus was that person who was sent to India by Alexander, and in fact let me tell you very let me tell you that Nearchus even was even with Alexander when Alexander was invading India. So when he returned from India, then since Nearchus also had interest in these kind of expeditions, and that's how he was sent to India. So Nearchus is coming, and then Nearchus has found a sea route, and after getting back from here, he had submitted his description over the description of all these kind of things. But then unfortunately what happened, his book also is not available in India, not available in India, and even in the that part also, and that's the reason because of what his writing is also not considered to be a very important writing, because this is not helping us in writing history a lot, because this is also something which is based on some that's called as hearsay. Okay, fine. Then it comes to the another important author, that's called as Aristobulus, right? Sorry, that we have then Ennisäcrates. Okay, Ennisäcrates basically he was a philosopher, right? And since he was a philosopher, and that's the reason, right? And philosopher, and he also traveled to India with Alexander, and that's the reason because of what this person got the chance to visit India, and to see something by his own or to experience something by his own. So he himself was a philosopher, and that's the reason because of what he noticed something more, that is Taxila, right. So whatsoever information that we do find on Taxila, that Taxila used to be a great center of education, and in fact he is even providing the list of scholars, those who had been graduated from Taxila. So these are the information that we do get from this particular book, and that's the reason because of what this person this person remains very important to us, and in fact his writing is not an hearsay, not a hearsay, rather it is based on his personal observation, right. So when it comes to the pre-Mauryan period, I hope you got my point, ki whatsoever authors or the scholars that we have talked about here, most of these scholars have never came never visited, they had never visited India, and that's how the authenticity of their writing is very less. And in fact, you remember this question that had been asked in few years back, that most of the foreign accounts are based on hearsay, right. But then here you should be very categorical that it does not mean that most of the writings are based on hearsay. A good number of writings are based on hearsay, but it does not mean all, because just now we have discussed, we have talked about this writing also, and this is based on the personal observation. But then when you talk about the pre-Mauryan period, these are the various authors, right. Okay, let's move to the next phase, and that is the Mauryan period. Okay. I believe that for Mauryan period, you must be having some information. You guys are going to tell me that when it comes to Mauryan period, what are the important travelers which were there, or the people who were coming to India or who were writing about India. Mauryan period mein. Now this is precisely about that period. Batao? Yes, of course, right. So undoubtedly the most important author is Megasthenes. Okay. The most important author is Megasthenes. Megasthenes. Okay. What else apart from Megasthenes? Can somebody tell me about any few other important authors apart from Megasthenes? ब्लैक कॉफ़ी आ गई, खूब मस्ती की है 3 दिन नहीं, तो रात को इवेंट ख़त्म होने के बाद वहाँ पे पहरेदारी भी करते थे. ओके. मेगास्थनीज के अलावा कोई दूसरा इतना इम्पोर्टेंट ऑथर नहीं है. ठीक है, हाँ याद नहीं आ रहा था इसीलिए ये सही कहा इसने कि सिंस देयर वाज नो इम्पोर्टेंट ऑथर ओके. नाउ द पॉइंट इज दैट out of all these sources what we have discussed so far, which one you find the most important? Undoubtedly Megasthenes, right. So that's the reason because of what a separate question can be expected always from Megasthenes. Earlier also they have asked question on Megasthenes, and any time in future you can expect a question from Megasthenes. So I'm not going to देखो हम मेगास्थनीज के बारे में और बात करेंगे. अभी आप जस्ट लिसन इट टू मी, लिसन टू मी फर्स्ट एंड देन विल गो फॉर मेगास्थनीज. व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम विद द मेगास्थनीज? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट मी टेल यू मेगास्थनीज हाउ कम दिस पर्सन इज कमिंग टू इंडिया. Actually what happened after the death of Alexander, the empire was divided into 5 branches. ठीक है. One of the military commander of Alexander was Seleucus Nicator, and Seleucus Nicator was very interested in expanding his kingdom towards the Indian side, and that's the reason he is coming to India. He had a fight with Chandragupta Maurya, and then Chandragupta Maurya somehow managed to defeat Seleucus Nicator, and then Seleucus Nicator sent Megasthenes to India as an ambassador, because the treaty which was signed between Seleucus Nicator and and Chandragupta Maurya, as per this treaty there were so many other provisions which were there, but one of the most important provisions, or one of the important provisions was this, that the ambassadors would be sent on regular basis like by Mauryan Empire to Seleucus Nicator and vice versa, right? So that's how you find that Megasthenes is coming to India, and then he stayed in Pataliputra for a longer period of time, and then he stayed here like we can say roughly 3.5 years, roughly 3.5 years. Now Megasthenes is very important for us. Why? Because Megasthenes is providing us information on so many different domains. He is writing about polity, he is giving information about administration, he is giving information about the economy, the various cities, the trade and commerce, the society, the various classifications of society, Indian geography, the distances between different cities and all. So that's how he had been providing information of multiple kinds. But then, as I have already told you, that as far as this particular Greek scholar is concerned, since a separate question can be asked on this, and that's why we'll cover Megasthenes separately, because there are two important things which are there for Megasthenes. One, that what kind of information we do collect from his book Megasthenes, and the second important thing that I must say, that what are the flaws in the in his writing, because his writing does have so many flaws, and it's very important for us to know that what important flaws were there, because then only we'll be able to do the proper analysis of his writing. So that will be done by us separately, but yes, this is one important source for us, right? After Megasthenes, now we have to go to the next category, and that is now post-Mauryan. And post-Mauryan period is again very significant for us, because there are several authors that could be noticed in post-Mauryan period. And in fact, one more thing I must tell you, that normally you know that Megasthenes has written Indica, but then I should tell you that actually there were so many books with the same name Indica was written down by various authors. So Indica was basically a particular name which was used for any sort of writing which was describing India, and that's how Indica name had been used by many authors or multiple authors, right? Now moving to the post-Mauryan authors. Okay. Among the post-Mauryan authors, post-Mauryan writers, there are some, again I'll say that you might have heard of them, but then there must be some scholars that you must not have heard. So one by one we'll be discussing about these authors, right? So first I'll say that there was a very important person, that scholars Diodorus. Have you heard of this person, Diodorus? सुना है? कौन सी किताब? अच्छा क्लास में सुना, कौन सी क्लास लिखी थी, कौन सी किताब लिखी थी, सॉरी ये नहीं पता। नाम सुना है? हाँ, इल्ले। सलमान खान का नाम सुना है? सलमान खान का भी नाम नहीं सुना है? तब तो फिर तुम सही जा रहे हो, ठीक है। Like then you have been going. This person is writing a book that's called as Bibliotheca Historiography. Sorry, Historica. Bibliotheca Historica. किसमें? तो जहाँ से आपने पढ़ा होगा, तो मैंने तो उससे कोई अच्छी किताब से पढ़ी है। इसका पीरियड क्या है? दिस इज फर्स्ट सेंचुरी BC. The period for this particular book is first century BCE. Okay, fine. Then there is another important author. इसका नाम पक्का सुना होगा आप लोगों ने. That is called as Strabo. Have you heard the name of this book? No. His book. He is writing World Geography. नहीं, प्लिनी भी है, फर्स्ट सेंचुरी अगेन BC. Now this author Strabo is very popular, and in fact Strabo is known for giving us information about the world geography, of course in a limited region. I cannot say he is writing about America and all. So of course America was an unknown world at that point of time, and that's why like he must not be writing about him. ठीक है? Okay. Apart from this, like let's move to another important author. Have you heard of this person? Pliny. Pliny. इसको कई बार हम कहते हैं प्लीनी द एल्डर. हैव यू हर्ड दिस पर्टिकुलर पर्सन? सुना है. किताब का नाम बता दीजिए. मैंने बताया था. हाँ पंकज बताइए, प्लीनी के बुक का क्या नाम है? प्लीनी की किताब का नाम नहीं पता है. उम्मीद है. हाँ, उपिंदर सिंह में भी इसका नाम. ये तो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट किताब है यार, नेचुरल हिस्टोरिका. ये किताब बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसको मैं मार्क कर देता हूँ. आप कहते हैं ना कौन सा याद रखना है कौन सा नहीं याद रखना है, ये याद रखना है. प्लीनी द एल्डर and his book is called as like Natural Historica. Okay, there was another important scholar that's called as Arrian. ठीक है? Yeah, Arrian. Now Arrian is again a very important author. Arrian is also writing a book that's called as Indica. ठीक है? And apart from this, like there was another book which is written on Alexander, right? So Indica and Alexander, these are two books which were written by him. Acha, one more thing, what are the periods for this? The Pliny is 1st century. Yes, this is 1st century CE. And the period for Arrian, yeah, this is again 1st century C. 1st century C. Or else you can write AD also, whatsoever you want to prefer. ठीक है? Well, there is another important writer that's called as Athanasius. Sorry, ATHA. Athanasius. Again, an important person, Athanasius. And Athanasius was like his time period was 2nd century CE. 2nd century CE. 2nd century CE. And his book is also like his book is also not available. Like his book is not present with us. The way we have talked about some early authors, कि किताबें हमें उनकी मिलती नहीं है. So that's why like it's. There was one more like important person that you have to keep in mind. That's called as Justin. Justin's book is also not available. इसकी किताब भी नहीं अवेलेबल है. और इसका पीरियड भी है क्या, like both 2nd century, 2nd century, and this is again 2nd century. So Justin is another like important author. Postmodern, right? 185 BC को वो बृहद्रथ ने मार दिया था. उसको बृहद्रथ को मार के पुष्यमित्र सिंह बिकम द रूलर. तो 2nd century BC, right? Okay. Now these are certain authors. like, you know, let me tell you, all these authors that I had been discussing here, they're considered to be very important, like, you know, like very important writings on India. Specifically, I didn't like refer Plutarch. Plutarch is a very important writer, and in fact, Plutarch is considered to be a sort of very important source on the beginning of Mauryan Empire. And in fact, I must tell you that as far as this author is concerned, like, you know, his name probably I didn't write over there. Like when it comes to Plutarch, like his writing is so important to understand basically the foundation of Mauryan Empire, right? I have already told you that as, like, you know, when Ashoka is there, like, you know, we do have some other sources to know about the Mauryan Empire, but then whatsoever developments were there before the Ashoka's period, unfortunately no Indian source has been given, like, you know, has given sort of good reference over it, and that's the reason because of what we are relying more on, like, you know, a foundation of, like, you know, Mauryans. So we are relying on these kind of sources. So whatsoever, like, you know, sources I have discussed in the post-Mauryan period, I should tell you categorically that these sources are, like, you know, they are very important, and in fact they are just giving us, like, you know, references on various things, such as like when it comes to Athanasius. Now Bindusar, like, you know, there is no as such book which is giving us good information on, like, you know, Bindusar also, right? So when it comes to Athanasius, he is the person, like, you know, writing about Bindusar, and in fact you must have heard, like, you know, one name, agar nahi suna hai to aap sun lo, there was one name that had been used in the Greek sources called as Amitrochates. ठीक है, there is one, like, you know, name that has been used, like, you know, that's called as Amitrochates. Amitrochates. Now again we had no idea that this person, like, this person was no one but Bindusar. But then he was called as Amitrochates in the Greek sources, and there is one text in Indian scenario, in Indian context, like, you know, he was writing, or it was giving reference of Amitrochates or Bindusar as one person, Amitraghat, right? A place like they have mentioned, Mahabhasya has mentioned about, like, you know, Amitraghat or Bindusar as Amitraghat. And since there is some similarity between Amitraghat and Amitrochates or Amitrochatas, that's the reason we had realized that, acha, like, you know, it's talking about the same authors, right? So that's how we can say that when it comes to rest of the Greek authors, like, you know, they are helping us a lot to write about the basically Mauryan Empire, establishment of the Mauryan Empire, and some other thing. So these are various Greek writings which are there. Okay. Now these are the factual description of the various Greco-Roman writings. Now let us try to understand the significance of, like, you know, the Greco-Roman writings as source of, like, you know, history. Okay. So let's talk about the Greco writings. हाँ. Time period के हिसाब से we have divided them, classified them as per the time, right? So it is quite possible. Of course, the pre-Mauryan sources are not referring about the Mauryan Empire, right? But the Mauryan and the post-Mauryan sources are mostly referring about the Mauryan Empire, right? So, you know, these are like the various, this is the heading, right? Greco-Roman writings as source of Indian history, of course. यहाँ पे थोड़ा हम, like, you know, let's see the things in terms of points. But before I come to the point, let me first ask you, why so many writings on India? Why so many writings on India? Any anticipation? आपको कुछ समझ में आता है क्यों इतना लिख रहे हो लोग इंडिया के बारे में? मैंने एक बड़ी लंबी लिस्ट दी आपको. I have given you longer list of the authors, those who had been writing about India. Now the question is that why did they write so much about India?
Significance होता है कि like Alexander जैसे हम लोग देखते हैं कि वो जब invasion पे निकला था तो हर एक part जो वो जीतते आ रहा था लेकिन it was in India it was defeated for the first time.
Nationalist argument है नहीं? Yeah, revisionist है.
availability of natural resources has made India as a sign.
नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज के बारे में पता ही नहीं था.
मतलब trade relations with Roman Empire was there at that point of time as well.
डिबेट कर लेते हैं आपस में, ठीक है, जो सोल्यूशन निकलेगा उसको हम लिख लेंगे यहाँ पे, राइट? चलो 1 2 3 लेट्स स्टार्ट. ओके यार, देयर आर सम बेसिक लॉजिक्स, लिसन वेरी केयरफुली. Let's say Nepal is situated close by, and then somehow you came to know, or let's say you are knowing this fact that Nepal is one of the prosperous regions, and Indian traders have been visiting Nepal very frequently, right? So you are listening that very frequently, like you are listening, okay, there is a land like called as Nepal, and Nepal is very prosperous, like everywhere you'll find like सोना ऐसे ही बिखरा पड़ा हुआ है, golds are scattered everywhere, ठीक है. Like suppose you are having this kind of perception for any particular country, in that case it's a natural human instinct that you'll definitely prefer or you'll like to go to these places. But then I think it was not that easy to go to like remote places at that point of time because the flights were not there. अगर हवाई जहाज होता तो फिर आप करते कि टिकट कटाते और चले जाते और घूम के आ जाते. बट उस पीरियड में घर से बाहर निकलने का एक सीधा सीधा मतलब होता था 50-50, नहीं आओगे, ठीक है. उस ज़माने में घर से निकलने का एक ही मतलब होता था, या मतलब जो 50-50 चांसेस होते थे दैट वेदर यू आर कमिंग बैक और नॉट. आपने सुना ना पुराने ज़माने में लोग तीर्थ यात्रा में निकलते थे, ठीक है. तो जब तीर्थ यात्रा में निकलते थे तो घर वाले मान लेते थे कि वापस आ गए तो ठीक, नहीं वापस आए तब भी चलेगा, क्योंकि यार लाइफ में कब कहाँ क्या हो रहा है, एक बार वो निकल गए तो 15 साल 20 साल के लिए वो चले गए. सो दैट्स द रीज़न इट वाज नॉट दैट इजी टू गो. बट सिंस द ग्रीको रोमन पीपल लाइक दे न्यू अबाउट इंडियंस एंड दे हैड बीन नोइंग अबाउट इंडियंस थ्रू मल्टीपल सोर्सेस. एज आई टोल्ड यू, सर्टेन इन्वेडर्स आर कमिंग, Darius is coming, right, Cyrus is coming, right. That's how you can find that good number of like invaders came to India, and they have like they have just invaded the northwestern part of India. But that's how like the connection between the Greco-Roman Empire and India got established, and this particular connection over the period becomes more intense when both of them or both the territories are coming into very intense like trade relationship. So once this trade relationship got established, so it's quite natural that the people over there would be interested in knowing about India. अगर हमारा मार्स के साथ रिलेशन है तो हम डिस्कस करते हैं ना, हमको पता है कि हम मार्स नहीं जा सकते. अब आप में से कोई अगर सोचता हो कि जा सकते तो अलग बात है, मुझे पता है मैं नहीं जा सकता. तो हमारे एंटिसिपेशन से चांद में लोग जाते तो लोग कहते हैं चांद का मुंह टेढ़ा है, चांद का मुंह सीधा है, कैसा है, मतलब वी आर वेरी क्यूरियस टू नो अबाउट दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग. सो हम क्यों क्यूरियस है, क्योंकि जिस जगह पे हम नहीं जा सकते उस जगह पे जाने के लिए हम क्यूरियस होंगे. सो आई होप यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड कि सिंस लाइक देयर वाज ए वेरी इंटेंस रिलेशनशिप, राइट, इंटेंस रिलेशनशिप between the two, that has generated, ठीक है. And what sort of relationship it was? It was basically one relationship like that we can say political. अब इस political इसमें जो है हम war भी कह सकते हैं, war के अलावा जो है हम ambassadors like या ambassadors, या फिर हम वो कह सकते हैं जो there was regular like sending and receiving the people. Of course the second thing which started is about the trade, like there was like a very intense trade between the two. So once there is this kind of relationship like when you find between them, so there was a curious like or there was a curiosity among the people of like Greek land, they wanted to know about India. That's the thing. Now here like brings like or here comes the most important question, that when you are interested to know about the like about any particular territory, specifically when it comes to let's say Mars, so the most important question is that कि whether the aliens are there or not. लोग रहते हैं, और क्या लोग रहते हैं तो उनकी आंखें दो हैं या उनकी एक ही आंख है. हमारी क्यूरियोसिटी किस में होती है, कुछ डिफरेंट है अलग तो हमें वो दिखेगा, ठीक है. या तो थिंग्स आर वेरी सिमिलर, अगर एक आदमी मार्स पे गया, मार्स में आके बोला पता है यार मैं वहाँ से एक बंदे से मिला, एग्जैक्टली सेम दिखता है, वही दो नाक, ठीक है, दो आँखें, दो कान, एक नाक है, एक मुंह है, वो लोग भी ऐसे ही लाइक दिन को खाना खाते हैं, रात को बैठ जाते हैं, ठीक है, और दो पैग लगाते हैं, बोलेंगे एकदम सिमिलर लाइफ है यार, ठीक है। या फिर वो बोलेंगे कि नहीं यार उनकी आँखें एक ही है और नाक दो है। तो इफ एनीथिंग इज वेरी सिमिलर और इफ एनीथिंग इज different, very different. So basically try to get my point. These people were actually not in a condition to know about the Indian society. They were not interested to know about the common things of Indian society. Rather they were interested in knowing about only something very specific or something very common between the two. That's how they were only interested in these kind of facts. Got the point? And probably that becomes the reason because of what, whenever you have been using these sources as history, I must tell you that there were so many flaws which are there. Okay? So we will be discussing about some more flaws, but of course whenever we have been discussing about these sources, now first of all we have to keep in mind what, the positive things, okay, and then negative things, right? So here we have to note down certain points on the positive things, hum baat kar chuke hain. Now we have to just classify them into certain categories and we have to write it out. You just give the heading, the Greco-Roman text or Greco-Roman writings as source of history. The Greco-Roman writings as source of Indian history. Indian history. Indian history. So I'm not going to repeat all those names like that I have already written. हम थोड़ा बस उसको use करेंगे and that's how we are just going to write. Okay, fine. So after the establishment of Asiatic society, after the establishment of Asiatic society, comma, William Jones highlighted the significance of Greco-Roman literature, Roman literature once he identified that Sendrocotus or Androcotus of classical Greek literature was no one but Chandragupta Maurya. Maurya. The Greco-Roman, full stop के बाद, the Greco-Roman literature can be divided into or can be classified into three categories. As per the academic convenience. Das pre-Mauryan, Mauryan and post-Mauryan. Post-Mauryan. The significance of the pre-Mauryan sources, pre-Mauryan Greek sources, the significance of the pre-Mauryan Greek sources. Pre-Mauryan Greek sources. In bracket, write down all those names of the pre-Mauryan period: Herodotus, Tacitus, Nearchus. 2-3 नाम लिख के ब्ला ब्ला कर दीजिए, ठीक है? Yes. Herodotus, Tacitus, Nearchus, Anicetus, etc., etc. are not very, close the bracket and then write, are not very helpful, are not very helpful, are not very helpful for Indian history writing. Indian history writing, but the Mauryan and post-Mauryan, the Mauryan and post-Mauryan Greco-Roman writings or Greco-Roman literature, Greco-Roman literature, Roman literature, are quite helpful for the history writing of Mauryan and post-Mauryan period. For the history writing of Mauryan and post-Mauryan period. Change the paragraph and write. Several modern scholars like A.L. Bossum, R.C. Majumdar, Jonah Lendering, J. McCrindle, and Peter Grant, critically analyzed the Greco-Roman literature and its importance. For Indian history writing. Okay. Now you can write the positive points. नहीं, अभी तक तो कुछ किया ही नहीं. Okay. First point. The pre-Mauryan Greek writings. Highlight on the political condition of India. Political condition of India, such as Herodotus, Nearchus, etc. Next point. इसको कर लेते हैं, like let's finish the all political points here only, okay? But
Same.
continue the same paragraph. The Mauryan and post-Mauryan, the Mauryan and post-Mauryan Greco-Roman literature, Mauryan and post-Mauryan Greco-Roman literature, which includes Megasthenes, okay, then write the Megasthenes and the other authors such as Diodorus, Strabo, Ptolemy, Plutarch, Pliny,
सर हमें स्ट्रैबो के बाद क्या होगा?
Plutarch,
उससे पहले
Pliny,
Ptolemy और
Ptolemy, Ptolemy, etc. Oh, sorry, sentence completed नहीं है. Etc. Do enlighten us the polity of India, do enlighten us on the polity of India during Mauryan and post-Mauryan period. Plutarch, Athanasius, do refer about the foundation of the Mauryan Empire. Justin gives the theory of the humble origin of Mauryan Empire. इसको humble origin of Mauryan Empire को put it inverted commas, quote unquote. Justin gives the theory of humble origin of Mauryan Empire. Okay. Pliny and not Strabo. There I haven't discussed the name of one important book. Sorry, I just missed it by chance. ठीक है, अभी हम कर लेते हैं उसको. There was one. Fine. There was one important book, that I didn't refer here. That is the Periplus of Erythraean Sea. Periplus of Erythraean Sea. Now we do not know the name of author, and that's how I missed it. Okay? But then this is like another very important book. Now when it comes to Periplus of Erythraean Sea, this is one of the most important books, like which is giving us reference on the various aspects of like Indian trade, polity, and economy. So yes, like what was like what exactly you have written in the last line?
So Justin give the theory of humble origin of the modern trade.
Okay, fine. Right. Ptolemy, Pliny, comma, Pliny, and Periplus of Erythraean Sea, do refer the other kingdoms such as Satvahana, comma, Cheras, Satavahanas, Cheras, and Pandyas. Cheras and Pandyas. Fine. So now these are the various what? Sort of political information that we do get. Fine. Now let's go to the next one. Okay? So positive में first point I did tell you that we do get the political information. क्या क्या लिखना है यहाँ पे आपको बहुत अच्छे से जहन में याद रहना चाहिए कि it is actually talking about the political condition. So pre-Mauryan political condition. So in the pre-Mauryan political condition they must be discussing about the Nandas. I didn't refer Nandas, but then you should keep in mind that they are talking about Nandas. That's one thing, right? Then the Alexander's invasion of India. So of course when it comes to his fight against Porus, like where exactly it must be referred? Only some in Greek writing, and actually they are written in the Greek writings. जो उनके साथ हैं, they are giving the description of the war and they are writing about it. And then it comes to the foundation of the Mauryan Empire, and then like Chandragupta Maurya, and then of course like it's about Bindusar, and then some of the kingdoms in Deccan and South India. Like this these are the references of polity we do find over there, right? Here of course the moment you are including Megasthenes, like you can even write, in fact write one more line, that authors like Megasthenes gives reference of Mauryan administration as well. Gives reference of Mauryan administration as well. Right? That's it. Okay. Now let's move to the economy. Fine. Write it down. The Greek authors like Herodotus built an image for India as a very prosperous territory, territory. Very prosperous territory. Full stop. Over the period, the trade relationship between India and Greco-Roman empires increased a lot. Which is also referred by various authors such as Megasthenes, Megasthenes, Pliny, Ptolemy, and in the book of Periplus of Erythraean Sea, in the book of Periplus of Erythraean Sea.
सर बुक का मतलब क्या
हाँ?
होता है? बुक का मतलब क्या होता है?
किताब
पेरिप्लस ऑफ एरिथ्रियन
ये मुझे वो वाली भाषा नहीं आती है।
और तो इंग्लिश में है ना?
नहीं। ओके फाइन। तो नाम है दस एरिथ्रियन सी। ओके कंटिन्यू इट। Pliny's Natural Historica, and Periplus, Pliny's Natural Historica and Periplus give information about the traders, comma, the trade items, in bracket write down silk,
ivory,
cotton, ivory, wine,
pieces, stones,
etc. Close the bracket. The Indian cities, the manufacturing activities, etc. In fact, Pliny complains that Roman Empire is being drained, because of extensive import of clothes and ivory, in lieu of gold and other precious stuff. Okay. Periplus has given references of the various Indian ports, such as Muziris, Arikmedu, Muziris, M-U-Z-I-R-I-S, Muziris, Arikmedu, etc.
so ये western side पे western side में
हाँ जाहिर सी बात है etc. Periplus has given the reference of various ports, Indian ports, okay, and the trade routes between India and West. India and West. Pliny also refers the various changes coming in this trade, because of the discovery of monsoons or because of the discovery of monsoon winds by Hippalus in 27 AD or 27 CE. 27 CE. Then this, of course, we are going to discuss further also, because this is a very important point what I have been telling you. But here I would like to highlight on one thing. Like, if we'll try to notice the trade pattern between India and West, in that case, initially you'll find that the land routes were dominating. Because when you do not have all those, like, sort of like skills and then tools and other things, like, of course, the better ships, in order to travel in the for the sea voyages, in that case it was naturally going to be very tough for you to travel in the sea. I hope you can understand the difficulties. You had no idea of routes, you had no idea of, like, you never had the devices. The ships were also very, like, immature kind of ships. In that case, like, it was very tough to travel in the sea. But then I hope you can understand that after the discovery of monsoon, it became pretty easier for them. एक बार जब मानसून की डिस्कवरी हो गई तो इन लोगों ने वो बड़े पाल वाले जहाज इस्तेमाल करने शुरू किए, और क्या किया, जब मानसून इधर से उधर से वेस्ट से ईस्ट की तरफ आ रही है, वो लोग उसी हवा के साथ इधर आ गए, ठीक है, एंड इनफैक्ट जब उल्टी बह रही है तब वो लोग वापस चले गए. Now they got this, like, somehow they got, like, this particular facility to carry the bigger volume of the stuff, like what they had been trading. So, like, without any difficulties. Earlier you just imagine that they had to come through the land routes, and let's imagine if they had been coming through the land routes, like, those small passages जो पहाड़ों में होता है, हाईवे तो नहीं बनी हुई है, तो उन स्मॉल पैसेजेस में से आप सोचो कि वो जो है, मतलब डोंकीज़ के ऊपर जो है वो छोटे छोटे सामान लाद के कितनी सीरीज़ में वो चलते होंगे, और एक पैर फिसला नीचे, इंसान या जानवर जो भी हो, तो वो बड़ा रिस्की है. दैट वाज वेरी रिस्की. But then here, like, you'll find that after the discovery of monsoon, the trade became a bit easier. And, like, in fact, Pliny is also referring those months in which they were supposed to come to this side and the months in which they were supposed to go back from here. So all these, like, references we do find in. Okay, fine. Next point is about, like, of course, society. Okay, economy we are done. Society and culture. Society and culture. The Greco-Roman authors have even given the description of the various facets of Indian society, and culture. Especially Megasthenes, who was writing about who has written about various institutions of society, such as varna, occupations, Varna, occupations, comma, festivals, fairs, etc., etc. They have even given information on the condition of women, women. Authors like Anti-Secretus, authors like Ani-Secretus, authors like Ani-Secretus, Anisacretes, Ani-Secretus, have given the details of Taxila University. That's it, nothing more like we're going to write. Okay, fine. One more point, geography. Write it down. Since the Indian scholars were very much silent, on the geographical condition of India, the Greco-Roman accounts are very helpful. Full stop. Aristobulus, Aristobulus, Bulls, Ptolemy, and Megasthenes have given good description of Indian geography, flora and fauna, Okay, that's it, right? So like we have more or less covered all the aspects. ठीक है, कल्चर में आप एक पॉइंट रिलीजन के बारे में लिख सकते थे, आई थिंक वी हैव मिस्ड, तो आप वहाँ पे जस्ट एक पॉइंट मेंशन कर लीजिए कि सम ऑफ द गॉड्स विच वर बीइंग वर्शिप्ड इन इंडिया और कल्चर में दे वर आल्सो रेफर्ड, हेराक्लिस एंड ऑल, क्रिश्चियन को उन लोगों ने हेराक्लिस कहा है, ठीक है, दैट कुड हैव बीन रेफर्ड. ओके, सो दीज आर द वेरियस डिस्क्रिप्शन. नाउ लेट्स गो टू द नेगेटिव पॉइंट्स and finish it, right? Let's talk about the negative points. A criticism as a source of history.
Limitations?
Of course, like limitations. So either you can call it limitations or criticism or negative, whatsoever you call it, right? Okay, so among the criticism, I have already discussed the points. Hearsay, that's one point. They are mostly based on the interesting facts. So first of all, we'll just we'll start with that. Okay, fine. So first point you write. There were several authors. In the Greek world, comma, writing about India, Greek world, comma, writing about India. For this reason, for this reason that Greco-Roman people were very interested in knowing about India and Indians, knowing about India and Indians. Knowing about India and Indians. India and Indians. That's why while writing about India, the authors have mainly highlighted the interesting facts about India. The authors have highlighted mainly about the interesting facts in India. Facts in India. Facts in India, which are not considered to be historical facts. Historical facts. Fine. Let's move to the second point. So what is the problem? So first of all, I told you that they were mostly dealing with the interesting facts.
पर सर आपने क्लास में बोला नहीं था कि एज कार्ड में बोला है कि हिस्ट्री बेसिकली
स्पेसिफिक थिंग, हाँ, तो दैट्स ट्रू. स्पेसिफिक इवेंट्स दोनों में फ़र्क है, ठीक है. अगर मान लीजिए जो है किसी के 2 कान है तो वो कोई हिस्टोरिकल इवेंट नहीं हो गया, ठीक है. एलेक्जेंडर इज कमिंग टू इंडिया, दैट इज़ ए हिस्टोरिकल इवेंट. सो हिस्टोरिकल इवेंट और फैक्ट में बहुत फ़र्क है, ठीक है. So this is like historical interesting facts. Okay, fine. The second thing, the second important problem, for these here, most of the writers, you must have noticed one thing: the books of majority of the authors are not available. Okay. In fact, while describing about these authors, I did tell you about several authors. Their books are not present. And I hope you can understand that if the original content is not present, in that case they have been referred by either some secondary or some further authors. So if the original book or the original content is not available, so that is creating some natural problems. Got the point? So okay, that's also one problem. Write it down. Majority of the books of Greco-Roman authors are not available in independent form, such as Nearchus, Megasthenes, Arian, Athanasius, Justin, etc. etc. The writings of these authors are available. In form of references. In other books, which questions which questions the historicity of their description, questions the historicity of their okay. Third, most of the modern day scholars argue that majority of the Greco-Roman writings are based on hearsay.
Majority of the
Greco-Roman writings are based on hearsay. Hearsay. There is a longer list of authors. There is a longer list of authors who had written about India, but never visited India, such as Herodotus, Tacitus, and in fact all these writers, like in the postmodern period, सबके नाम लिख लीजिए, सबके मतलब just write the name of few and then etc. Ptolemy, Plutarch, Pliny, Arrian, etc. Those authors who came to India are only Nearchus, Anicetus, and Megasthenes. Among them, it is only Megasthenes who has given a wider description of India, which was based on his personal observation. The others have written mainly on the basis of the various travelers and traders coming to India. That's why it seems a justified statement, it seems a justified statement that majority of the sources, Greco-Roman writings, not sources, majority of the Greco-Roman writings are based on hearsay. Hearsay. But yet, they do play an important role for the construction of Indian history. They do play a very important role in the construction of Indian history. Okay, fine. So now let's move to the other category. So among the other category, of course, there's a very important segment that is about the Chinese literature. Okay, so Chinese sources or the Chinese travelers or the Chinese foreign account as source of Indian history, right? So when it comes to the Chinese, travelers specifically, so I think you all must be remembering the name of three important person, like those who visited India. One, which is Fa Hien. The second is Sang, and third, it's right. These are three important authors, like those who have visited to India, and in fact, these three authors have also written a lot about India, and they have they have discussed so many things. When it comes to these authors, these travelers, those who came to India, again when it comes to the modern historians, those who have studied about them, so we can just write the name of few. So the person who had studied beautifully, one is Samuel Beal. These are the modern historians, those whose works have been recently published in 2010, 2016, right? These are those fellows. Samuel Beal is the person who has basically studied Wen Sang, okay? Then there's another person called James Legge. James Legge, right? James Legge, that is another scholar. Well, apart from them, there is another person called as, ये तो याद ही रहेगा, Tansen Sen, right? This is another authors. These three authors that you have to keep in mind, that whenever you have been going for analysis of these Chinese travelers, you have to keep in mind. Here I should tell you one thing very categorically. When it comes to the Chinese travelers, we are going to cover all these Chinese travelers independently, right? हम फाइयान के बारे में अलग से बात करेंगे, ठीक है? मतलब the way we have covered, the way we are going to cover Megasthenes as a source of history, in the same way we are going to cover Fa Hien, then Wen Sang also, because Fa Hien is coming to India in 399 ACE and is staying in India for roughly around 14-15 years. 414 he is leaving this country. And this person is coming through this Himalayas and then northwestern part of India, and then he enters into India. Then he goes to Bengal, from Bengal to Tamlipti, that was Tamlipti. Then he goes to Sri Lanka, and then from Sri Lanka he gets back to his own place, right? Then when it comes to Wen Sang, he is coming during the period of Chandragupta II. Now Wen Sang is coming during the period of Harshavardhan, and he is giving a very good description of the period of India during the Harshavardhan. And Itsing is coming in the 7th century, or that's the early medieval period, and then he is also staying here for 10 years, and then he is writing about India. Now there are some basically factual information and then some conceptual things that we need to know. But here I'm just going to tell you one thing, actually when it comes to their description, so it is not only the if we'll talk about the differences among these three, I must tell you it is not only the time that they are coming to India in different times, their perspectives are also very different, such as when it comes to Faiyan. Now Faiyan is the first Chinese Buddhist monk who is coming to India. So by that time Buddhist has entered into China, but then it hasn't flourished in such a way that it hasn't flourished in such a way that they knew everything about Buddhism. So that was the period when they wanted to know about Buddhism, and that's why when this person is coming to India, at that point of time, what was the most important objective for him? That he needed to carry various Buddhist text from India, because the real translation of these in fact there was no translation available, so they wanted to somehow access to the real books or the authentic books on Buddhism. That's why he is coming to India. When it comes to Wensang, that point of time Buddhism has already flourished a lot in China, and in fact not only flourished in China, there was separate branches of Buddhism got established in China, and in fact from China it started going to the Japan and Korea and all these places. So by that time Buddhism is well established over there, some separate branches were flourishing over there, and that's how the need was not there this much that they just wanted to know about Buddhism, rather some political or diplomatic needs were also there. And that's how when Wensang is coming to India, his objective was not only to know about Buddhism, of course it was one of the objectives, and in fact the reason because of what Wensang is coming to India was this also, that he was not very satisfied with the kind of translations which were available of Buddhist books in China, and that's why he is coming. But at the same time he also had this objective to establish a diplomatic relationship between India and China, and that's why he was very happy that when he is going back from India, so he was very happy for this fact that he had got he has developed well or good relationship with Harshvardhana, and that's why he thought his own ruler would be very happy with this, because there was a now diplomatic relationship got established between the two. Now Itsing's writings are not considered to be very important, but some information we do draw from here. But then as I have told you that in the later discussions, when we'll go to the Guptas, we'll cover about Faiyan separately, when we'll go to Harsa we'll cover Wensang separately. So these are couple certain Chinese sources which would be covered by us separately, and that's how let's leave it. Okay. Now there was some more text what we have to talk about. Among them there is one is Sri Lankan text. Okay, one category is the Sri Lankan text. So first of all you need to know that why Sri Lanka. In fact when I was having discussion over Buddhist literature, at that point of time I have already told you that how come Buddhism was traveling to Sri Lanka, and it was Asoka who took the Buddhism to Sri Lanka. And once Buddhism went to Sri Lanka, then after that what happens, somehow in Sri Lanka also Buddhism, the Theravada of Buddhism, that becomes very popular, and after that a sort of tradition got established even in Sri Lanka, whether some of the texts were being written. So we'll just see briefly that what are the various texts which were written over there, and in fact how come these texts are quite helpful for history writing of India. That's what we are going to discuss, right? So one by one we'll be talking about few of the texts, right? Yahan pe I am not going to dictate anything, so just note down certain things here only. Okay? There is one text which is called as Deep Vamsa. Okay? Now Deep Vamsa was originally written in Pali, later on was translated into Sanskrit, right? And it was written somewhere in 4th century CE. Deep Vamsa was written in 4th century CE. Initially I told you in Pali, and then later on translated into Sanskrit. Now this is one book which is enlightening us on the establishment of the Mauryan Empire. In many of my classes I keep on telling you the story of Chandragupta Maurya and Roti. सुनी वो कहानी? नहीं सुनी? नहीं सुनी कभी कहानी. चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य जो है वो बड़ी मशक्क़त कर रहे थे, किसके लिए? नंदास को हराने के लिए। कहते हैं कि अलेक्जेंडर के जाने के बाद he realized that now this is the best chance or the opportunity for him to establish his own kingdom, and that's why he had been putting hard efforts to defeat the Nandas. But then you all know Nandas were very powerful, bade powerful in Nandas. So it was not easy for Chandragupta Maurya to defeat him. And that's the reason every time Chandragupta Maurya was putting his effort, he was being defeated, and that's how he was being he was losing the battle, and then he was again he had to start from the zero. तो ऐसे एक बार क्या हुआ, चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य जो है हार गए नंदा के खिलाफ और भटक रहे थे इधर से उधर। जब इधर से उधर भटक रहे थे, रात को एक जंगल में भटके चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य और बड़ा डर गए। जंगल है, अंधेरा है, बिल्कुल कुछ नहीं दिखाई दे रहा है, भूख भी लगी बहुत है। तो उन्होंने क्या किया, उनको दिखाई दिया कि बहुत दूर जो है एक रोशनी से जल रही है। तो उनको लगा चलो आज रात का ठिकाना तो हो गया। तो पहुँचे तो एक बहुत छोटी सी झोपड़ी थी और झोपड़ी में उन्होंने आवाज़ लगाई कि कोई है कोई है। तो अंदर से एक बुढ़िया की आवाज़ आई, बोले बताओ। बोले कि मैं एक पथिक हूँ, राहगीर हूँ, आई एम ए ट्रैवलर एंड आई हैव लॉस्ट माई वे, तो आप मुझे आज रात को शेल्टर चाहिए। तो उसने बोला आ जाओ, यहाँ तो आसपास और कुछ मिलेगा नहीं, लेकिन प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हमारे पास एक ही यही झोपड़ी है और तुम्हें भी यहीं सोना पड़ेगा। तो उसने बोला प्रेटी लेकिन फेयर इनफ, ठीक है मैं भी सो जाऊँगा। उसने कहा कि जो हम खाएंगे वही तुम्हें खाना पड़ेगा। उसने बोला खा लूँगा। तो कहते हैं कि बुढ़िया अपने पोते के साथ रहती थी उसमें, उस झोपड़े में, और बुढ़िया ने क्या किया, रोटी बनाई और रोटी जो है एकदम गरम गरम निकाल के वो उसके थाली पे रखती है। और जैसे ही रोटी थाली पे रखी, उस बच्चे ने क्या किया, बीच से रोटी तोड़ी और खाना शुरू किया और मुँह जल गया बच्चे का। रोटी अगर एकदम गरम गरम उससे उतरी है, जब अंदर पूरा वेफर है उसके, तो मुंह जलेगा ही, ठीक है। तो बुढ़िया ने कहा कि ये चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य वाली हरकत मत करो अपने पोते से। चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य शॉक्ड, भाई इसको कैसे पता। तो उसने पूछा कि आप जानती हैं चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य को। तो उन्होंने कहा कि इस बेवकूफ़ को कौन नहीं जानता है। चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य और शॉक्ड भाई। तो बोले क्या बेवकूफ़ी की, तो बहुत बहादुर टाइप का जो है वॉरियर है। तो बोले खाक वॉरियर है, दिमाग है ही नहीं उसके अंदर। तो बोले क्यों, क्या गलती की चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य ने। तो उन्होंने कहा कि चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य जो है नंदास को हराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। अगर आप रोटी बीच से खाओगे तो मुंह जलेगी। रोटी अगर आपको खाना है तो किनारे से आप तोड़ तोड़ के रोटी खाइए, तो मुंह नहीं जलेगा। एंड दैट वाज ए लेसन फॉर चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य। एंड देन ही रियलाइज कि ही वोंट बी एबल टू डिफीट डायरेक्टली टू नंदा। एंड देन ही चेंज हिज स्ट्रैटेजी ऑल टुगेदर, और फिर वो साइड से जीतना शुरू करते हैं और फाइनली नंदास को हराते हैं। ये जो रोटी वाली स्टोरी है, ये स्टोरी बहुत लोग कभी हर्षवर्धन के साथ सुना देते हैं, कभी किसी और के साथ सुना देते हैं, बट दिस इज एक्चुअली स्टोरी which is mentioned in Deepavamsa, and I hope you got my point. It means that this particular text is dealing with the establishment of the foundation of the Mauryan Empire. That's the idea. ठीक है. So this book is very important. In fact, this is the book which is dealing also with this fact that Ashoka killed his 99 brothers in order to access to power. Right? That's also one important information. So I hope if at any point of time, if you're compelled to write any particular answer on how come the Sri Lankan or Singli texts are helping us to write the history of India, in that case you'll be able to deal with it. Okay? Apart from this, there is another book that's very popular, that's called as Mahavamsa. Mahavamsa. So Deepavamsa and then Mahavamsa. याद रखने में बहुत मुश्किल भी नहीं है. That is a book of 6th century CE, and then you don't need to remember so many things, right? For this Mahavamsa. Then just remember there's another text which is called as Mahavamsa. Okay? There is another very important text called as Mahabodhi Vamsa. It's Mahabodhi Vamsa. Of course you can write about them. I got your question. Yes. So of course you can write Mahabodhi Vamsa. Now this is a late book, right? That book was written somewhere in 11th century, right? That is a very late book written somewhere in 11th century. And this book is also dealing with so many things. Now since it is a late book, and that's why it is dealing with the later developments of Buddhism, right? So when it comes to the later developments in Buddhism, I hope you can understand that it is talking about the several things happening to Buddhism in India, right? It's about the various branches of Buddhism, the various people, those who those who are hating Buddhism and they wanted to finish Buddhism. So these are various information which is there. In fact, I must tell you that whenever it comes to the Sri Lankan text, you can just note down certain points these are the information that we do get from those Singli or the Sri Lankan text. One is the foundation of the Mauryan Empire. We are getting information on the foundation of Mauryan Empire. Right? The discussion pertaining to their caste. Okay? Like foundation I did tell you. Foundation of Mauryan, caste of Mauryan. I think you might have heard these kind of things. अगर नहीं सुना है तो हम आगे जाके सुनने वाले हैं. Mauryans को बहुत लोग जो है ट्राइबल कहते हैं, बहुत लोग शूद्र कहते हैं, बहुत लोग क्षत्रिय कहते हैं. ये पूरा डिबेट आया कहाँ से? Singly text, ठीक है, where they have been they were quite particular about that who exactly were the Mauryans. That discussion is there, right? The third important thing, of course, it is about it is helping us biography of Ashoka. Biography of Ashoka. So in the biography of Ashoka, you know that there are several things happening to Ashoka. And frankly speaking, Ashoka does not write about these kind of things anywhere. Such as his love story with such as Karwaki. ठीक है, उसके साथ है. या फिर जो है Ashoka was acting as the governor of initially Ujjain and then later on Taxila. So he was working as governor, then he's killing 99 of his brothers and then he's coming to power. All these kind of things are basically referred from the Singli text. And that's how the authenticity of these informations are highly doubtful, right? So you can't say this is how the things have happened. One very curious, interesting fact I must tell you, that when it comes to the third Buddhist council, frankly speaking, Ashoka nowhere writes that he sponsored the third Buddhist council or he patronized the third Buddhist council. And that's a bit curious, a fact for historians, that a person who had been recording everything that he had been doing, how come it is possible for him that he has kept mentioning about the third Buddhist council? Got my point or not? Ashoka writes about everything. He is visiting Bodh Gaya, he is putting a pillar over there. He is visiting Sarnath, putting a pillar over there. He is visiting Lumbini, Lumbini, putting an inscription over there. Every time, whatsoever he is doing, he is putting an inscription or let's say pillar for that. How come it's possible that this person had sponsored or patronized such a glorious event of Buddhism, that is the third Buddhist council, and he hasn't mentioned it anywhere? Then how come this idea is coming that Ashoka had sponsored or patronized the third Buddhist council? It's also coming from the Singli text, right? So I hope you can understand how important they are as far as the history of the Mauryan is concerned. So you cannot actually ignore the Singli text or the Sri Lankan text, right? For their importance, because they are again very important, right? Now let's move to then another important section, that is the Nepal's folklore. Nepal's folklore. There's just one book that you need to keep in mind as far as this Nepali tradition is concerned, and here we can talk about that particular book that's called as Divyavadan. Divyavadan. It is the origin of this particular book is bit doubtful, right? That where exactly this book is coming. So it is believed that this book was initially written in Pali and then later on it was also translated into Sanskrit, and this happened somewhere in 3rd century AD, right? This happened somewhere in 3rd century AD or CE. Now Divyavadan is very important with respect to basically the Ashoka's life, right? It has it is enlightening us on various aspects of अशोका's लाइफ, अशोका's लाइफ। अच्छा वो पीछे यार एक पॉइंट हमने लिखना शायद हम भूल गए थे। We have written foundation of modern caste biography as okay fine. There's one more point you just noted down here, the development in Buddhism, the further or the future development in Buddhism. Fine. Okay, so when it comes to Ashoka's life, there are two chapters in Divyavadan. There are chapters basically. What are these chapters? One which is known as Ashokavadan, Ashokavadan, and there's one more. Kunalavadan. These two chapters are considered to be the most important one as far as Ashoka is concerned, as it is giving us various references for Ashoka and the various important thing which is happening in Ashoka's life. So what are the important information provided by is such as Ashoka has constructed so many stupas. वो सुना होगा ना, Ashoka has constructed how many stupas? 84,000 stupas, right? So just note down couple of points कि Ashoka constructed 84,000 stupas. अच्छा, it also deals with the end of the Mauryan Empire, the decline of the Mauryan Empire, decline of the Mauryan Empire. Decline of Mauryans. It tells us about Pushyamitra Sunga as a person responsible for the decline of Buddhism. Like it is written for him, Pushyamitra Sunga, that he killed so many Buddhist monks. कहते हैं कि उसने बहुत सारा जो है इनाम भी डिक्लेयर किया था कि जो भी एक बुद्धिस्ट मॉन्क का सर ला के देगा, ठीक है, उसको बहुत सारा जो है कॉइन्स इनाम में दिया जाएगा. Moral of the story is this, that there is an image built for Pushyamitra Singha as a hater of Buddhism, as a person responsible for ending Buddhism. But then I must tell you that we'll discuss later on that it has been regarded wrong, or it has been considered wrong, whereas later in serious history, Pushyamitra Singh is considered to be a person who himself patronized Buddhism rather than finished Buddhism. वो कनिष्क के टाइम पे हो रहा है, right? So this is how Pushyamitra Singh, there's a different story that we find for the Pushyamitra Singh, but then yes, these are the information which are given. In fact, that whole narrative, that the post-Mauryan period was the period for Brahminical revivalism is based on this text only. Understood the point? The post-Mauryan period is considered to be a period for Brahminical revivalism, and that whole concept is based on which text? Divyavadan, right? Keep in mind. तो ये सब चीज़ें बाद में बहुत इस्तेमाल होने वाली है आंसर लिखने में, याद रखिएगा, इसीलिए ये सब बता रहा हूँ कि ये सब they are undoubtedly very important. So that is how we can see. इसमें और भी अशोक के बारे में कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन है कि उनके लास्ट के दिन बड़े पेनफुल थे, और there were so many other things which have been discussed, they are not very important. So among the Nepali folklore we can talk about this particular text which is undoubtedly important, right? Let's move to a last category, that is the Tibetan text, right? श्रीलंकन कैटेगरी में आता है, नहीं इंपॉर्टेंट, छोड़ देना. Among the Tibetan category, there is one book which is I think you might have heard of this book, that is called as Arya Manjusri कल्पा. ज़्यादा बड़ा हो गया, ठीक है, क्या करें, इतना ही बड़ा है तो, ठीक है. आर्य मंजुश्री Mool Kalpa. Manjushree Mool Kalpa. Right? There are two persons responsible for the writing of this book. So there's one person called as Manjushree himself, right? So Arya Manjushree, or let's say Manjushree, is writing this book somewhere in 9th century. 9th century, of course, CE. So of course he was an Indian scholar. ठीक है? हाँ? एक? हाँ, कौन थे? Now he was the second person known for preparing the Tibetan version of this book. Now unfortunately this version is not available. Only this is the version which is available. Correct? And that's why we count them in category of which sort of literature? Tibetan literature. Originally कौन सी literature है? Indian literature है. Then what would be the significance of this book? Basically this particular book is dealing with some of the stories of Mauryan Empire. कभी ऐसा independently नहीं लिखना पड़ेगा, but then you just need to keep in mind it is dealing with the Mauryan Empire, that is one thing. It is also dealing with Chanakya, ठीक है? It is definitely talking about Ashoka as well, right? But the most important thing, like which we do get from this book, this is about the expansion of Buddhism in China and Tibet. So expansion of Buddhism in China and Tibet, that we do get from this particular book. Okay, fine. There is one more Tibetan book, right, that is written by Lama Taranath. That book is considered to be very important source for Ashoka. No, it's the author. That book is providing us valuable information on Ashoka. Right? In fact, you might have heard of two names of Ashoka. That's right? चंडाशोक एंड कालाशोक, ये इसी किताब में यूज़ किया गया है. These are used in this particular book. हाँ, वो श्रीलंकन टेक्स्ट में, वो that you could have written over there. Devanam and Piyadasi, that have been used in Sri Lankan text. So these are certain information that we do get from this here, okay? And like you want more information that he himself, he himself was coming from Vajrayana, and that's why it is one of the texts which is helping us to know about the various principles of Vajrayana form of Buddhism, right? So these are the various information that we do get from these texts. That's all about the foreign accounts. So now we are just left with the archaeological sources and some secular literature. We'll just briefly discuss about them. Okay? So that we'll be doing in the next class. Okay? Thank you very much.